Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Today's podcast is sponsored by RocaNews. Be the most interesting person at happy hour. How can you make that happen? Well, Roca delivers informative and engaging news without partisanship or spin. Since its launch in 2020, Roca has grown to 1.2 million daily readers. So join them by reading Roca's free, yes, free, that is our favorite word, daily newsletter designed to make you the most interesting person at happy hour in just 5 minutes. Subscribe today by clicking the link below in our show notes and go off and have a great time reading RocaNews. Hey, any youngers, it's me, your host, Jen Glantz, back with another episode of the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. I am so excited to be here with you today. It is so sunny outside. I just have a renewed sense of love for life in the month of June. I don't know if it's because we had a really long winter here in New York or if because I'm made for the sun, but I've been finding myself smiling a lot since the start of June. And things haven't been like rose-colored good. It's just I'm trying to find the good in really anything. I'm trying to spend more time outside. I'm trying to see friends more. And I'm just trying to force myself out of these weird places we find ourselves in. One of the things that I recently did was I went to Central Park. And Central Park's become a place that Adam and I visit at least once a month. Now that we have a car in New York, it's easier to get around. Plus, Central Park is like Goofy's major playground. I don't think she likes anywhere as much as she likes Central Park. But we've been going to Central Park my whole life. And by my whole life, I mean, as a kid, I probably came to New York maybe 2 or 3 times before I ended up moving here. And when you go to visit New York, you always go to Central Park. You always go to the Bethesda Fountain, which is the famous fountain in the movie Home Alone and in so many other movies. And we always went there. And even now, when I'm living in New York, every time I go to Central Park, I always go to the Bethesda Fountain. To me, it's like the center of Central Park, and I always find myself there. And last time we were there, I sat on the fountain, started to think about how much beauty there is, and going back to spots in our lives that we've gone to over and over and over again. Now, some of you have a landmark in your local town that you visit daily, or maybe you travel somewhere and you go somewhere a couple times a year, or maybe every other year, or maybe there's just somewhere special in your life that you go to once every couple of years. The coolest thing that you can do, and I do this every time I go to Central Park, is I sit down and I ask myself a series of questions. And these questions are a little bit of self-reflection and a lot for you to be able to see how much you've changed over time. So I ask myself things like, Jen, what has changed in your life? And who have you become since the last time you were here? And who in your life, who in your world do you love more now than ever before? What have you lost since the last time you were sitting here? And what has that taught you about yourself? Next time you're here, what do you want to figure out? And what do you want to say you've achieved? What secrets, Jen, are you holding on to, and how are they holding you back? What makes you happy right now? And hey, what's next for you? And I know you're thinking, Jen, you do this while you're in Central Park, while there's tourists all around you. And the truth is, yes, I go there and I find that spot on that fountain that I've sat in many times before. And I think about these things. Life is so fast, it goes so fast that we often miss the things that are happening in our lives. We miss the changes. We miss understanding how we feel in the moment unless we stop and allow ourselves to feel those things. I'm heading to Boston this weekend. It's only my second time that I have been there. My first time was last year. I went to go work a wedding and I fell in love with the city. It was so beautiful and fun. And I said to Adam, I want to make this a spot that we come back to every summer, or at least every other summer, or whenever we can, because it's such a fun, beautiful place. And we're going back there. And when I'm telling people about the trip, they're asking me why. Why are you going to Boston? Are you working? Do you have a wedding there? And I found myself saying, I'm going to Boston just because. And there's such beauty in those two words, just because it signifies that you are taking an action without having any outside external reason. Just because is almost like a way of self-care, just because you want to, just because you need to, just because it is something that will fuel your soul for good. It's been fun answering that question when people ask me, why are you going to Boston? I just respond with those two words because the truth is I don't really have much of a reason. And I'm excited to be able to do something this summer without having a reason. You know, for so much of my life, the past couple of years pre-pandemic, I traveled a lot for work. And when you travel for work, like when you go to a wedding or you're traveling for a speaking gig, you literally see the hotel ballroom or you see the conference room, and then you go back on a plane and you leave. So a lot of the cool cities that I've traveled to once or twice for work are becoming places that I want to go back to just because. And maybe for your own life, not only about places you want to go to, but things you want to do just because. And maybe those are old hobbies or pick-me-ups or just fun activities that when people ask you, why in the world are you going to go play tennis? Or why did you decide that this year is going to be the year you go on a ceramics retreat? You answer with those two simple words, just because. One cool thing I'm working on this week is I'm starting to do more brand collaborations with brands who are reaching out, who want me to share their product to my audience. And I'm very, very strict about who I work with. I don't want to just take on any brand collaboration. I've been in the game for almost 10 years and I'm just starting to take brand collaboration. So I'm being very picky about who I share with my audience. A lot of the sponsors of this podcast are businesses and platforms and organizations that I have used personally for many, many years that reached out to be a sponsor, and I adore them already, so it was a perfect fit. And I recently partnered with a hair care line called Keratin Perfect. I love them a lot. I have used them before we partnered. But we did a partnership together and it had many parts to the partnership. So when you work with a brand, you structure a deal. You say, okay, here's how it's going to work. I'm going to provide you with these different assets and you're going to provide me with payment. So for this deal, the deal had many different parts to it. I was going to provide them with a couple of quotes for a press release they were putting out. I was also going to provide them with an Instagram story, a TikTok, and an Instagram reel and things like that. But I didn't realize how hard it is to make a really good Instagram reel for a beauty company. You know, I'm used to partnering with like tech platforms and, clothing companies, but beauty is a whole other category. You have to show the product in motion. And even though these are products that I use in real life, I don't use them on camera. So I'm not like in the shower smiling and posing while my hair is sudsing up and, like all these things. And I'm here this week having to film all of these assets for this brand. And I started to panic a little bit. I was like, how in the world am I going to make this look beautiful when I am not one of those beauty influencers? I'm like a little bit of a mess. Let me tell you, we got to give these influencers out there a lot of credit because it is super hard to shoot good content for brands, especially beauty brands. Like there is a science to it. I have been mapping out my script for these videos. I've been asking Adam to learn how to shoot the camera in all these different directions. I even bought like a one-piece bathing suit so that I could wear it in the shower to shoot me, washing my hair. Okay. I am going to share the final product with you when the video comes out, but it is a labor of love and I'm so nervous about it, but this is a good learning experience for me because I definitely want to partner with more beauty brands, especially ones that I already use and love, and this is one of them. So learning how to create content as an influencer is really, really, really hard. I mean, of course there's harder jobs out there, but this one is like hilariously hard because you're like in the shower trying to shoot content, and it's just hilarious. Like, I just want to take my shower in peace, but here I am inviting the world to see my beauty routine. Today's episode is about a topic that I have a feeling all of us have felt or are feeling now, and it's the word regret. In fact, there's studies out there that say that regret is the second most discussed emotion after love. So lots of people out there will talk about love, and they'll talk about love they have, love they lost. And the second type of emotion that comes up is regret. Things that they regret doing or not doing, that almost is as heavy as the feeling of love, whether current or lost. But regret is something that we feel on all different levels. I found myself super nostalgic lately, thinking about regrets from the past. Every time I go to Florida, I enter like this nostalgic cloud of sort of sadness, thinking about all of the regrets I have or the things that I miss, the people I regret not keeping in touch with, or even the things I regret doing back in the day that maybe, changed my life in one way or another. But then there's everyday regrets, like regretting something you ate. I wish I didn't have that 10th piece of pizza, or regretting something that you say to a friend. And I do this all of the time. I am that person who, when I'm in a conversation with a friend, I am backtracking the entire time thinking, Jen, why did you just say that? Oh my God, I hope they didn't hear that. I hope they're going to talk to you again after you just said that. When truthfully, I doubt they even care that I just said that. But I get so self-conscious sometimes in conversations, and that type of regret spins and spins and spins in your head and doesn't allow you to be who you are. But it made me start to wonder about all the regrets that we have in our lives, from things we've said to actions we've taken to really big things that we just didn't do that we knew we always wanted to do. I wondered if there was more of a purpose that regret has in our lives. And the truth is, regret is a huge purpose. It is a huge purpose in our life because it allows us to see what we've done and what we want to do differently going forward. I want to read you a quote from Aidan Feeney, a professor of psychology at Queen's University. Aidan says, "It would be a very, 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 you can see how many times they stressed very bad idea to eliminate regrets in your life. Aidan says it's a mechanism to learn how to improve your decision making. It's a signal that maybe you need to rethink your strategy." And I think about this a lot. Some of the regrets I have are about things I didn't do. I wish I sent that email. I wish I asked for more money. I wish that I got off the couch, paused Netflix, and actually did something that's on my bucket list for the year. Those are the kind of regrets that if we reflect on them, we start to see a huge gap in how we're living our life and the game plan that we have. So Daniel Pink is another person who writes about regrets often, and Daniel Pink is the author of a book called The Power of Regret. And Daniel says that there's multiple types of regret. So I'm going to talk to you about the 4 types of regret that Daniel writes in his book. Number 1 is called foundation. It's regrets revolving around a failure to be responsible. This could be like skipping school or not taking care of your health. And this is a big type of regret because these could have longer term effects on you, on your health, on your mental health, on your career, and things like that. Foundation regrets are things that we want to stop as soon as possible and adjust. I challenge you to think of any foundation regrets that you have. Are these different habits that you want to kick? Are there parts of your life that you're just neglecting that you know you should take care of? Maybe it's going to a doctor. Maybe it's really reflecting on your overall health. Maybe it's not getting mental health help when you really know that you need it. Maybe it's that you're doing something that's just completely irresponsible that you know you should stop doing. And I'm not going to call out what those things are because I know a lot of you know what those things are. Next is the boldness type of regret that comes from being overly cautious. And these are things that maybe when we're faced with a potential life-changing opportunity, we don't do because we're scared. So maybe it's dating. Maybe dating is the thing that's your boldness regret. Going on that next date might lead you to that person who's the love of your life, but you don't know, you don't do it. Or maybe you're scared because you want to start a podcast and that could lead to you quitting your job and making money off of the podcast, but you don't do it because you're scared. Or maybe the boldness regret is that you want to change something about yourself, whether it's even just dyeing your hair a different color, but you're scared. What are the things out there in your life that you're not doing, you haven't done, or maybe you said no to because you are scared? Moral regrets is the next kind, and those are centered on other people who maybe we've hurt through our own failings. Maybe those are the regrets because we've done something, whether an action or we've said something that's hurt other people. I'll never forget, I have a moral regret from kindergarten that still haunts me today. And I've written about this on my blog and in my Monday newsletter quite often, but it's something that I will just never forget. In kindergarten, during playground time, we were all outside, and there was this young girl in my class who was so popular, was so perfect, everybody adored. And her and I were friends for the most part, but I wasn't her. And because I wasn't her, I was so jealous of her. She was perfect. She was gorgeous. All of the boys in kindergarten liked her, which at the time meant everything. And none of the boys liked me, which at the time meant everything. And I don't know what came over me that day, but I remember standing on a rock and saying something so mean to her, so mean that I don't even want to say it here because it pains me that I said these words out loud to her. Like, so mean. I don't know how I was able to do this, but at the age of 5 or whatever age you're in kindergarten, I somehow was able to think of the world's worst thing to say to her, like the most hurtful thing I could say to her. And maybe it was a way of showing me that I'm going to be so good with words later on in my life, and I should be careful with how I use those words. But I was able to think of the world's worst thing to say to her, and I said it. And I got off that rock, and obviously I hurt her feelings. I don't know if it had a lingering effect on her, but I do know that it's something I will never, ever stop thinking about. We went through grade school together, and then I never really saw her again. However, when I started to live in New York, one year, I think it was maybe like 3 years after I moved here, I took the subway, and the subway car was like empty, which is so rare in New York. And I look across from me, and about a couple of seats over, there she was, this girl from kindergarten. And I went over, I said hello, and we had some like missed connections around New York City. Like we've seen each other here and there. We've Instagram DM'd each other a couple times to maybe get together. But this is something I'll never stop thinking about. And I don't know if it'll clear my conscience if I bring it up to her and apologize as 30-somethings, but that's a moral regret that I have. And I have so many others, but that's one that I just will never, ever forget. Then there's also connection regrets, which concern lost relationships with family members or friends. You know, thinking back to all of the people who we're no longer close with or we've had falling out with and things like that. I always think about my ex-best friend who broke up with me, and I think about the regrets I have that I don't even know if they would have saved the friendship, but of course, regrets around how I could have been a better friend, how I could have been there for her, how I could have put her first sometimes, and things like that. Those are the 4 types of regrets: the foundation, the boldness, the moral, and the connection. And those are the types of regret categories that seem to haunt us, that seem to exist in our lives. And if you're somebody who is facing a ton of regret or you're letting it linger in your head, we want to first bucket them into those categories and then start to think about, okay, how can I use the outcomes of some of those regrets to make changes in my life? How can I use the outcomes of those regrets to do something differently? In Daniel Pink's book, The Power of Regret, he says one way to help you get better at regret is to put emotions into words. That helps you process your feelings. It shows you, okay, here's how I'm feeling in the moment, and maybe that could help you make a good decision. And if you end up making a decision that you regret, you can also go back and start to process why you did what you did and how maybe you can do it differently. Also, to practice some self-compassion, we have to start to let things go. I hold on to so much regret from my life, as I'm sure you do as well. And practicing that self-compassion allows us to feel like, okay, these things happened. They are a part of me, but they are not my everything. You know, we have to stop judging people based on what they have done in their life and start looking at them more holistically. Just because we know people who have made mistakes or we've made mistakes, we can't place so much judgment on just those mistakes. We have to think about all of the other things that go into a person. Daniel Pink says that sometimes we believe our experiences are more unique than they really are. You might think that you're the only person who has ever had regret, but the truth is you're not. You're not that special. So many of us have had regrets. Rather than letting these regrets make you sad or feel bummed out, let them help you drive future action. Think about what you want to do today and tomorrow and next month that is different than how you want to live. A small regret that I have is that I don't take my vitamins, and I want to start taking my vitamins, right? And every single day I go to bed and I sit there and I'm like, Jen, I regret the fact that I did not take my vitamins, and it bums me out. It makes me sad. How am I going to use that regret to put that into motion? Well, I have my checklist for the day, and I write on there 12 p.m. every day, take your vitamins. This is a silly example, but it is the absolute example of how we can alter our life, how we could make changes based on things we regret not doing. Now, I found out about Daniel Pink in my friend Chris's newsletter, All the Hacks. Chris was a guest on the podcast, and he wrote about 4 things that Daniel Pink says that you should always start to think about because you're going to regret down the road. And here's the 4 things that most people will always regret down the road. Number 1, always make the phone call. If a person pops up in your head or you're feeling like an urge to reconnect with the person, but you don't know why, take the moment, take the opportunity, make the call, tell the person, I'm sorry, I love you, what's up, what's new, just make the phone call. Even if it feels awkward and scary and you're hesitant to do it, just do it. Number 2, always go to funerals. There's no explanation needed. I've regretted that before. I remember when I first moved to New York City, I was making absolutely no money, and my great aunt passed away. And this is somebody who I was close with. And I remember I couldn't really afford a flight home. I didn't want to put out my parents or use someone else's airline points, so I didn't go. And that was something that I absolutely regretted. Yeah, maybe it would have put me into $200 of credit card debt, but perhaps that was something that was worth it, and I regret that for sure. Number 3, ask yourself what you would tell your best friend to do. Sometimes, and this is what Daniel Pink said, it's easier for us to make decisions when we're not us. Now, I know you, and you're probably such a good advice giver to your best friend or to people in your life, but when it comes to you and what you would do, you often start to hesitate and maybe start to go down the path of making the wrong decision. But if you take yourself out of the equation and you look at it more as, what would I tell my friend to do in this situation? Perhaps the thing that you do is something that you won't regret as much. And number 4, convert your regrets from thoughts to words. Instead of holding all of the heavy emotion inside of you, learn how to share them with others. Find people in your life, whether friends or therapists or just any other people, and allow yourself to start to share these feelings, share the heaviness of all of the things that you regret. I hope these things were helpful. You could read Daniel Pink's book, The Power of Regret. You can check out Chris's blog, All the Hacks, or you can just start doing some good old self-reflection and learning more about yourself. As always, my friends, I'm cheering you on. All my love, Jen Glantz. Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.